Hey, you ready, man? Big show today.
Yeah,
We
I'm
got
ready, man.
dude Adam freaking Dean, huh?
Yeah, it's wild.
Dude, I mean everything that's happened this past week. This is gonna be a fun one to kind of go over.
Yeah, I
But
mean, everybody's been talking about Vasil and the testnet and all that, so it'll be great to hear from the source.
and obviously there was definitely some sensational sensational things that came about from his original tweet, right? And it maybe got taken out of context, every way, shape, or form. Even Charles responded to it. It's kind of it kind of became a pretty big thing fast. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it went big. I mean, I think even you were saying if you Google it, right? Like it'll show like catastrophic testnet failure or something. So the articles really ran with that tweet. It's amazing how fast a tweet can spread like that.
Yeah, and when I search Cardano, it just all these videos come up of like testnet catastrophe, and then I watch them and they don't seem to really know what is actually going on. They're just referencing other people's references. It's funny because Adam actually got in. He's like a pretty big player, obviously involved with Buffy Bot and is the kind of co-founder of CNFT Con. And what is also interesting too is I remember him getting into it. Do you remember when he got into it with Mark Cuban about like kind of Mark Cuban was being super critical on like Altcoin Daily or something, and
Yeah, what
basically
is it he said? It was like that Dogecoin has more utility than Cardano or something like that.
yeah. So I remember Adam Dean kind of got into it, maybe called him out for engagement farming a little bit, but then it led to a healthy discussion. So I mean, there's like a lot to talk about with this guy.
Yeah, like I'm pretty excited. I mean, none of that news even came out when we already scheduled this interview, so I think it's going to be a great one.
Yeah, and then one other topic we can slip in there too is like what he thinks about DeFi, the metaverse, CNFTs. I really want to ask him because I saw a tweet thread with him and Alessandro, where they were basically discussing a kind of new standard that Alessandro was proposing. And it was interesting with that because I remember him giving some kind of feedback to that standard that Alessandro was proposing, and they kind of got into it, and it turned into a healthy discussion. It seems like, and even Thaddeus from Wild Tank. So it'll be fun to ask him his thoughts on that. Do you have anything else that you're planning on asking him?
Well, I definitely want to know more about CNFT Con and kind of what they have planned for that because I know I'll be there and I know you'll be there. So I mean, I think that's going to be a fun time.
All right. Well, I think he's coming in pretty soon. So, all right. Well, anything to say to the audience before we get started, Sub?
No, just tune in. I think we're going to learn a lot today.
All right, cool. Well, let's get him in. I hear him knocking. All right, welcome back to another episode of J Critical. I'm J Crypto, and we got Subcritical in the chair across from me, and we also have an awesome guest today. Um, some of what we'll talk about is time sensitive. Some of what we're going to talk about is honestly just getting to know our guest because he's a massive player in the Cardano ecosystem. So why don't we do that real quick? Adam Dean, thanks for coming to the J Critical podcast. How are you doing, man?
Hey guys, doing good. Thanks for having me on today.
Cool. Cool. What do you think about this whole setup so far and process? We always like to ask the guests when they come into this thing.
Yeah, it's been interesting and pretty easy to set up and dive right in. So, very neat format. I'm looking forward to it.
Sweet. And you can change your own camera angle with keys 1 through 9 too. Just a fun thing for the guests to play around with while we talk. But Subcritical, man. So what's going on? What's today's topics for discussion? Anything to add to the intro of Adam Dean? What's going on, boss?
Yeah, so for today, we just kind of wanted to talk to Adam and just get to know him a little bit more. And then also, there's been a lot of news with like the Vasil hard fork and things going on with testnet. So we kind of wanted to just break that down a bit because I feel like all the information's been a little bit scattered, whether that's like finding some on Twitter or there's some YouTube videos. But we'll probably just kind of break it down of like what happened and what they did to resolve it, and then where we're going to next. That'll be kind of like the talk we have on that.
And by the way, I mean, Adam, you could attest to this, man. Like, we did not expect to talk the majority about that. It just kind of happened 3 days before the show, right? Like, I think we reached out a couple of weeks ago to you.
Yeah, we started talking about doing this show a few weeks ago and trying to find time, and then events just led up to now we have this whole conversation about testnet right before right before filming. So yeah, if you guys want to talk about that a little bit, happy to. Seems like we're putting most of it behind us now today and moving forward though, so all positive.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's that's like a good place for us to have our conversation instead of like, 'cause it kind of gets a little wild when you're like right in the middle of things because information's still getting out there. And I saw Charles's tweets and like other people arguing online, and it's just like it can get a little out of control sometimes.
Everybody has like little snippets of tweets of information, and yeah, it's crazy. By the way, Adam, what's really cool, I think, about you as a player in this ecosystem would be fun to set up, because I don't think, obviously you're known by probably viewers that watch this through various different places. Can you just like kind of give us the synopsis of like, what is Adam Dean? Like, what do you do? Because we see you talking to Mark Cuban, we see you in these tweet threads, we see you involved with CNFT COD. Like, what's kind of, can you give us the full picture?
Yeah, for sure. So I joined Cardano about, I guess, getting close to 3 years ago now, in late 2019. Marco from NFT Update and my co-founder of BuffyBot brought me into the space and said, "Hey, let's get involved in Cardano and do something together." So we did. We started as stake pool operators, running the Buffy stake pool, and we're doing that for about the first year of Shelly. And then, of course, once the Mary hard fork came along and we started getting native assets, I got really into looking at things like token distribution fountains and stuff like that with space coins, which some people may have heard of. And then when the NFT scene blew up, we were kind of well positioned already to be a part of that. So we played a big role in a lot of the early mints of NFTs on Cardano and the development of the standards alongside people like Alessandro and Smog from Pool PM and a lot of the other players that were involved. So now we're kind of pivoting away from that because there's now a ton of great options for NFT minting and focusing on building our community event, which is this year called CNFT Con. And it's going to be in October. October 8th and 9th in Las Vegas, Nevada, for like an in-person meetup and celebration of all things blockchain and specifically the NFT community. So it's really exciting. And yeah, I just dove headfirst into Cardano. I love the ecosystem. I love the community. So I'm very passionate about it. So sometimes that gets me in trouble, and other times it gets me talking with Mark Cuban. So we saw a little bit of both in the last 2 weeks. So.
Yeah, we're both going to CNFT COD, by the way, so we're excited. Maybe we'll be able to just obviously do a little shake your hand in real life too, which is fun that we're meeting in the metaverse first. But
yeah, that is kind of funny, right? Like we're meeting him here first before we actually meet him in person at CNFTCon.
That's what probably happens with these online communities, right? It's really interesting when you actually meet people IRL, and you guys provide that platform with CNFTCon, which I think can really become, I really see that as like the long-term beacon for community meetups for Cardano, just after talking to Marco, because I did a long form podcast with him and seeing his ideas and where he's going with it. I think that's really going to be like a massive beacon for the community, more community focused. Obviously projects will be there. They're incentivized to be there by having that community going. You get to meet with the community, but yeah, man, I think it's going to be big and bigger every year.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's the hope and the goal, and Marco and myself together bring, I think, about like 20 years of experience, both as attendees, exhibitors, and managing Comic-Con style events around, allowing fans to meet creative artists and actors and celebrities and people that they're just interested in getting a chance to meet and interact with in person. And these but these community events are so huge. You know, we like to joke in the NFT community about, you know, oh, well, you know, my investment went to zero, but it's about the friends we made along the way. But that really is important, and it's huge. And then when you get a chance to really talk and see somebody face to face across the table or in the room, and have brainstorming sessions, a lot of really good stuff comes from it. Not only solidifying those friendships into something real and physically tangible, but new ideas, new collaborations, new art. So hopefully we'll see some of all of that.
Yeah, I really think that's a big thing about like these conventions is getting to know people and making these connections that, you know, start new products or whether just like a new relationship and things like that. And then, you know, like just getting to know, like there's a lot of people like I really want to meet Peppers, like from, and like just because I've talked to him online all the time, and then actually just like kind of see the whole thing going on with Cypher Kicks like in person would be kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, and there's so many different projects and people that are already confirmed that are going to be there. That yeah, it's going to be hard even just to slam meeting everybody I want to meet into those 2 days that we have this year. So, you know, it'll be like, okay, I got 5 minutes to talk to you, and then I got to go because I don't want to miss this next person. So, but we'll try to make it happen.
Yeah, man, that's all. Yeah, exactly. Maybe a good transition then would be just a current events quick point I wanted to make or throw it in here is another thing that was really big while everything that you were involved in that was kind of blew up or got a lot of exposure this week was there's the Nelk boys, and they just interviewed the Bored Ape Yacht Club founders. And what was very interesting about that is they actually discuss how for like online communities, the type of people that are involved in these communities every day typically work from home, and they like that. They like having that option to work from home and be involved in these online communities, especially in crypto. And it's also perfect for doing like events, because people that do work from home and maybe they're home bodies and they're not doing stuff, they can kind of schedule out because they don't work for a job and like 5 events a year. Like it's just kind of the natural almost lifestyle of these people, which is kind of funny because that's CNFTCon is something that people can kind of add to their lifestyle that are already kind of working in this space day to day. Any thoughts on that too?
Yeah, for sure. And I think I would, you know, agree with that a lot, you know, and we do have a tendency to get, you know, if you're a work from home person, I have been for the last 12 years, you know, you kind of don't realize how important getting out and socially interacting with real people is until you do it. And then you realize, wow, I kind of like, you know, miss that human interaction piece. You know, it's more important than just chatting through text messages or tweets online. But the beauty is that with these NFT communities, now we already have a shared common thing that's bringing us together. So it makes it kind of that much easier to interact. You know, my wife jokingly said when I was going to the summit last year in Wyoming, you know, like, what's it going to be? A bunch of internet nerds like standing around the corner, like facing the wall because they're afraid to talk. But it really wasn't, because we were all there for Cardano as passionate Cardano community members. And so, of course, we just naturally talk about this thing, this passion, this shared passion that we all have. So it is very natural, very fluid, even for the people that are normally kind of introverted homebodies, to get out there and feel accepted and welcomed with open arms to a community and realize they're not alone. And I think that's really important from a kind of a mental health angle, to realize it's not just random anons on the internet. These are real people, and they've got my back because I've got their back, and we're all here together for this kind of common cause.
It definitely enhances the Discord and discussions too, when like you start to realize, oh wait, these are real people. Like these are people with real thoughts that are also researching or passionate about this thing, and not just anonymous people on Twitter that I have no idea who they are. So you get to see their opinions in a different light.
Yeah, and I think, you know, especially like looking at recent events and everything, it kind of definitely has a tendency to temper kind of how you treat other people online, because you realize, wait, that is actually a person over there. So would I say that to their face? If I wouldn't, maybe it helps get you thinking, like, and hopefully even when we disagree, having more constructive conversations rather than the kind of tribalistic toxicity that we're very prone to fall into very easily.
Yeah, unless you're subcritical, he makes fun of me regardless. But no, I'm just kidding. But so that might be a good transition. So what happened? Because I like, I think yeah, I have a take on this, but I wanna definitely dive into this from like an objective standpoint. Like, what is kind of going on with Cardano right now? And why is there this attention that people might be seeing? I'm framing the question in a way that probably displays less information than I even have, just in case people are watching this for the first time. But should people be worried? Like, are we in a place where it's great and we can just move on? Like, what's kind of going on? And if you could give like kind of a rundown a little bit, or subcritical, do you have anything to add in terms of context? You can probably add some better context as well if you want.
Yeah, I think all of us just kind of want to know, because we saw like the tweets come out talking about a testnet issue, but then some people were talking about mainnet, and then I think it like kind of got mixed up there where people were worried like something happened on mainnet, but then they heard the testnet failed. So if we could just start from what exactly happened and like how it affected the testnet and the mainnet, and then like kind of where we're at now.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, that little tweet of mine got blown up and taken, kind of way out of context. And of course, the FUD media decided to run with it and only use like the very first tweet that I broadcast rather than digging through the thread and kind of getting to the gist of what we were trying to accomplish. But, we've got this Vasil hard fork coming up, and it's going to happen. And so we're testing new software, and you test new software on your testnet. So a version of the new software came out, and we tried it on testnet, and it ended up breaking the testnet. So now we have to spin up some new testnet environments to continue testing. But meanwhile, we have a new version of the software that we need to test. So a lot of people were jumping in and just going, hey, let's just upgrade mainnet right away. Where some of us, myself, Andrew Westberg, and a few other people, were like, hey, like, let's pump the brakes and give us a little bit more time before we go and upgrade mainnet. In my thought, also, the reason I started the thread is that we do have this disaster recovery plan for Cardano that IOG wrote. It's one of the 153 research papers that have been published by IOG. That, hey, we broke a testnet. This is a great time that we could implement this disaster recovery plan and see how it works. This is a testing opportunity. Of course, that got taken out of context to say, like, I think, Adam Dean believes that Cardano is broken and going to fail.
It's a disaster.
Right.
It's a disaster. But yeah.
So for me, for my personal feelings, before we had testnet and we had wallets that supported testnet, so we could test all of our apps, like, a new NFT drop, a Sunday swap, or a different DEX, or drip drops, which I'm also part of the team on. But right now, because testnet being broken, we can't test our software, and specifically, we can't test our software against the new version of the node. So my goal was to advocate for caution and waiting a little bit longer so we could get the testing done. And it was just unfortunate that it got blown up and blown out of proportion. And part of that is due to my language choice was a little bit sensational, because I view it as, kind of a very big and critical part of driving the ecosystem. So luckily, though, we're going to move forward. We have like 3 new testnets that we're testing on right now, actively as we speak. And bottom line, end of the day, is that this new version of the code is probably rock solid, and we're going to upgrade mainnet to it, and we're going to get through the hard fork, and all of this is going to be fading away. So it's the hype of the moment. people's blood was kind of up in arms and very passionate. But that's okay too. This is decentralization in progress. We're not all going to agree all the time. So hearing conflicting opinions is extremely important to make sure that we're arriving at a community consensus where at least the majority of us all agree in the right direction to head.
Mm-hmm.
I think like the people who are kind of researching, spending time to understand what's going on would definitely agree with you. And then there's definitely, obviously, with online communities, a portion of people who are probably just headline reading, and they might have a hot take without wanting controversial opinions being able to be discussed. So I agree, man. Like, it's really healthy. Super interesting. I had pretty much I would say 50% of that in my head, but that really helped me understand what's going on. My take though is I think that this is actually a healthy thing. I do think your point got across, and it's something that educated a lot of people. Even the fact that you were able to reference a research paper that is, already done and could have a future possibility when we have testing opportunities to be implemented. It's good that there's awareness of that more so now. I just think that in a way, because we're moving forward, because we're confident that the Vasil hard fork is going to happen and strides are being made, all publicity in a way can be good publicity too. So I mean, it's kind of interesting hearing your thoughts on that. And I would just say that, I think it's awesome what transpired. Besides, like, I mean, just as much bad came out of it, I think just as much good came out of it, because now there's a lot of learning, discovery, education being shared, and awareness on why you had this take that obviously when people heard, they were kind of shocked for better or for worse. And it made them, the people that wanted to research more, it made them want to get further educated. And I think that will actually help in the future. Any takes on that or anything else before we get Subcritical's take?
Yeah, for sure. It's one of the unfortunate things about the internet and where we are today is that sensationalism is what gets people to actually wake up and pay attention. And even then, you're still getting like maybe 30 seconds of their time if you're lucky, right? Because shortly after my initial tweet that's kicked off this whole thing, I published another one, saying, hey, if that scared you, good. Like, let's go and have these conversations with the community. Ask people that you're trusting with, your money. This is crypto. People are invested in this. Ask them if they are doing testing. Because it's important that the players that are involved are doing testing, are involved in TESTNET, and are helping to make sure that the software is safe and secure and reliable for the entire community. I love and respect Charles Hoskinson and all the people at IOG that are working hard as heck on bringing this code to light. But we are a global decentralized community that we all share some responsibility. So unfortunately, though, the sensational headline grabbing, quote unquote, catastrophic, got all the attention.
Is this what I'm gonna have to title the thumbnail? Something like that?
No, definitely don't.
Just to get attention on this.
Adam Dean spills the beans.
Spills the beans about the catastrophe, right? Yeah.
It's sad, man. It's true.
Yeah.
The incentives are so wrong. It's like, as a content creator myself, I know exactly what you mean. I know, like, I get it. It makes sense why people are running with this story the way that they've been running with it, but the incentives are so messed up, man. Any hope for the incentives? Like, what do you think about that? Because that's part of the issue, I guess, with any disinformation or FUD, right?
Yeah, well, and I think we've seen it. It's not just the internet; it's everything, right? I mean, because even newspapers and regular over-the-air broadcast news has for decades been moving to this kind of sensationalism and what's the headline, what's going to get people's attention. You know, you look at really old newspapers, there's a reason the whole front page was like 3 big shocking words like, oh my god, the world's on fire, because that gets
we're not going
people's
to make
attention.
I promise, Adam. Like, I don't want you to be thinking that we're going to do that. We're going to make a pretty unsensational headline and just try to get the word out. But yeah, man, I totally agree. World's on fire. Adam. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but you know, it is what it is. You know, like we all only have so many hours in our day, and we have to pick and choose what we give attention to. So unfortunately, the calm, rational guy being like, "Hey guys, like maybe we should test this some more." Nobody's got time for that. You know, a lot of people before this tweet blew up probably didn't even know that Cardano had a test net, and that's just the reality of the matter. So there's blessings and curses in it. You know, it was misused to write some negative critical articles about Cardano, but at the same time we got a lot of the community talking and discussing and learning more. So I do to some degree regret publishing it and, you know, having it be misused, but at the same time I don't regret starting that conversation and bringing that conversation to the larger community. So it's a mixed bag, blessing and a curse to have to use that kind of incendiary language sometimes.
Do you think there was like another way to do it? Sorry, Subcritical. I know that you probably have a take. I'm just curious though, like, is like that might have been the best way to get the conversation going too. Like, was there a better way to do it, or do you think you kind of had to shock people a little bit?
Well, the problem is that, you know, a lot of the comments and feedback were like, well, you should have gone to a Discord server or DM'd somebody.
Right.
You know, like if you saw a problem, something that you thought was like really like mission critical and needed to be stopped, do you know even who to DM? Are there DMs open to you? Do you know which Discord to join to actually get that conversation going? So unfortunately, you know, again, this is a big global community, and I want the small time, you know, developer or something anywhere in the world to feel like they can speak up and hopefully get their voices heard, especially if they do discover something that was even more mission critical than this. You know, by saying like, no, like, you know, we shouldn't talk about these things publicly because people are going to write headlines, only serves to like keep the public misinformed about what's actually going on. So I believe in open, transparent community discussion about what's going on. And unfortunately, though, that also leads to like naturally picking sides and like, no, Charles is right, Adam's right. Like, that's not what it's about at the end of the day. It's about Cardano being good and solid and going forward. And we're all going to get there together. So I am absolutely bullish on the long-term prospects for us. And we're going to get through this.
Subcritical, man. I know you've been holding back. I know you had some interesting nuances to this or talking points. What are you thinking right now?
Yeah, so I think it's great to see like this is probably going to open up more channels for communication, and that even everybody's reflecting on it. Like I saw Ben, I saw Charles. A lot of people are talking about how they're going to set it up so we can have better communication lines, right? And I really like the openness. I like to hear, but I would like to hear more like ahead of time, because I feel like they announced like, hey, we're gonna have an SPO meeting, and they kind of had this like SPO meeting on the side, and then everybody was kind of sitting on the side waiting for some news. And then I think as soon as they saw your tweet, they just latched onto that because we were all sitting around waiting for information. And then people just like went with that first tweet, because nobody reads subtweets except for people like Jay and I that actually go through and read it all. Like a lot of people just take that first tweet and then they just run with it because that's like the news, you know. And then when it comes to like, you know, big disasters, right? Like I mean, I always like to think about like the Hindenburg, because like, you know, like these huge things were flying around the air for the longest time, but only everybody just remembers the huge Hindenburg like disaster, and they only remember that Zeppelin, right? Like there's so many other Zeppelins that were around and did good stuff, bad stuff, all that, but that's all people remember because people love a good train wreck, and so that's what people were kind of like waiting for to see, and then they ran with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Hindenburg's a great example of like we were saying, like traditional print media being sensational, and latching onto that one big headline, and they probably did have like an opinion piece like on the back page of that newspaper, like, hey guys, like Zeppelins are okay overall, but nobody read that one,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's the news cycle, and yeah, getting people talking about it, I think, is the biggest and best thing, openly. But for my 2 cents, like let's do it respectfully and not by just name calling and threatening people and doing things like that. It's perfectly fine to have an opposing viewpoint or opinion, but there's a respectful way to go about it.
Do you think that if this conversation didn't start, Cardano ultimately would be in a more vulnerable place? Because that's currently where I stand, and I'm still gathering information, Adam. But that's currently where I stand. I think that this was a good conversation, because like the headlines can say what they want, but if we proceed with the Vasil hard fork and in a month Cardano's still up and running, I mean, it doesn't really mean anything if we have like a week or two of bad headlines. So I think that this conversation is far more important to have started and actually puts Cardano in a stronger place. Do you view it like that? Just to maybe tie things up on this before we get to here's a sensational one. Adam Dean is friends with Mark Cuban, and we can talk about why you're friends with Mark Cuban. No, I'm just kidding. There's a good set. But what do you think about that, honestly? Do you think that we're going to be in a less vulnerable place?
I think we're going to be stronger coming out the other side of this, for all the bad headlines and all the toxicity that was momentarily generated. I think we're going to be stronger because we are talking about communicating better and more appropriately going forward. Yeah. And if we hadn't done that, for me, people like to say crypto is a trustless economy. So I don't want us to rely on trusting anybody, even if it's Charles Hoskinson. I want us to, verify for ourselves and be sure that we're confident. And that's what I think the ultimate major benefit of having this conversation publicly is going to do, is that, like I said, massive respect for those guys, and they're working their butts off. But don't trust, verify, prove to yourself that everything's good to go. Because we do have this amazing testnet opportunity where we could invite the wider public to participate once we have wallets and explorers that support it, so that we can onboard people and say, hey, here's a free cryptocurrency kind of like environment on testnet that you can go and dip your toe in and figure out how to set up a wallet. And it doesn't matter because it's fake money. But you'll have the tools and knowledge necessary when you are setting up your real wallet to get in there and know, okay, yeah, this is familiar, this is comfortable, but I had this test environment to learn in. And that's the beauty of a testnet and why it's so important.
Yeah, that's one thing I was really harping on with people for getting into DeFi was like, hey, try out these testnets that are coming out. MinSwap had a testnet, SundaeSwap had a testnet, and that's a good time to kind of see how all these fees add up and how that works out. So I think the testnet is definitely a great thing to have, and that was like one thing I think people were worried about when they heard like catastrophic failure. Like, is there no testnet ever? Is it gone forever or whatever?
Yeah, well, guess, that blockchain is gone forever. Essentially, that's the long and the short of it. And it was a 2-year-old blockchain that had been running, and that's kind of why it was a big deal for me to go, hey, let's pump the brakes and keep testing some more to make sure that that we're good, and we'll be fine.
And then I guess the other thing, so was the disaster recovery plan ever used, or like you were just kind of saying maybe we could have used it?
So it hasn't been used yet because we haven't had a disaster on mainnet, right? So far mainnet's been rock solid and been good to go. So again, I still believe that we've had a disaster on testnet, and that means that this is a great opportunity to test the disaster recovery as well. And whether we do that or not, maybe we'll spin up a new testnet and break it on purpose so that we can test the disaster recovery.
Cool.
but let's talk about that. Let's get to that point that we're doing these tests as a community to again increase the resilience and strength of Cardano. So this is all about building Cardano up and making it even better than it ever has been.
Yeah, because I know it can be hard to communicate even just like in a regular like company, right? Like if you just have like a couple engineers and things like that, people have days off and they're gone. But when you add in decentralization and like somebody's like at a different time zone sleeping right now and like you're trying to like figure out what's going on, like that adds so much more like complexity to it.
But you also have more human capital too, with like a larger. So there is like a little bit of two sides of the coin there for sure. And you have more insights as well, like people coming up with things like, hey, let's spin up a test net and break it on purpose just to test out this disaster recovery program, which is, it sounds incredibly smart.
Yeah, for sure.
So why don't we move on, because we've kind of exhausted that topic. It sounds like things are going really good, so that's awesome to hear. I didn't talk about it at all on my channel, Adam, so I didn't add to any of the sensationalism because I didn't want to do that. But I'm really happy that we were able to kind of get the full story from you, man. So I guess what we could move on to is it like what do you look at your your Twitter profile? Do you ever think like, wow, like I am kind of a big player in Cardano. I'm even having tweets that are being, responded to by people like Mark Cuban. Can you walk us through the mindset maybe on what that was even about and why I'm referring to that, / like where you're at right now as a player in this ecosystem? It's well deserved, obviously, but yeah.
To be honest, it feels kind of surreal, especially because even with the quote unquote follower count that I have, I'm still a relatively small fish in the wider ecosystem. We're not talking even 10,000 followers. But meanwhile, I took a shot and I tweeted at Mark Cuban after he went on to a podcast and said some kind of incendiary and inflammatory things about Cardano and Dogecoin and everything. And
yeah. And by the way, that was Altcoin Daily, correct? Like that he was responding on Altcoin Daily, I believe.
Yeah, I think it was. And I was like, why not? You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and but this was 100% false, the things that he said. So let's take a shot. The worst that he can do is ignore the tweet, right? Because it comes from little old me, nobody. But then all of a sudden, like people are like, hey, by the way, Mark Cuban responded to you. And I was like, what? And I thought we had a lot of people dislike it because he said bad things about Cardano, and he's a VC guy with big money that invests in projects and has a good and bad track record in things that he's done. But I thought a lot of good came out of that, even though he was being critical and asking some hard questions. It was still a learning opportunity because it opened up at least a small window into his mind and what he's thinking. And if we do want to appeal to mass market adoption, we need to consider all players and all pieces of the puzzle. So yeah, it was really amazing to get that opportunity. Then of course, we saw Mickey, Mr. Telecom from World Mobile, really take that ball and run with it and engage him and actually get Mark asking some good questions about like what is World Mobile, what's your go-to-market strategy and things like that, and put them through a bit of the Shark Tank experience. And nothing would have come from that if I hadn't just taken a chance, right? So it's cool. But the idea was, when people are actively spreading misinformation, how can we engage them in a rational, calm discussion? And hopefully present our counterpoints in a way that maybe they listen, maybe some of their followers see and hear it and react positively, because it's never just about the two parties that are talking, right? It's about the silent audience that maybe is just absorbing that knowledge and information that's being shared. And again, it's always best if we can do that calmly and respectfully.
No, I love that, man. And for me, it's like what was interesting is peering into Mark Cuban's psychology and how he's thinking about these topics, or Cardano. Maybe for what would be fun to discuss too is a little bit about your biggest takeaways from those tweets, and what did you glean from, like, what is he kind of, you know what I mean, like what kind of why maybe is he still critical of Cardano, and what did you kind of glean for what he's looking for? Because I don't believe, I know some people do, that he, you know, these bigger fishes, we'll just say, are being purposely, you know, ignorant, or they're you know, fudding people's bags. I don't necessarily believe that. I think it's there's a lot to learn here. There's a lot to learn in crypto. It's complicated. So it would be interesting then if you could kind of go into some of your biggest insights from that conversation and opportunity.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway for me was, and it really does put it into perspective, is that there are a ton of crypto projects in the market right now. You know, there was a time when it was like Bitcoin or Ethereum, pick your flavor. But now there's hundreds or thousands of different projects to invest in, to buy the coins of, and which one do you buy and why? Like, what is their real, like, why am I different proposal? I think that was the biggest takeaway I took from Mark's kind of back and forth with the community is, yeah, Cardano has, you know, all of these features, but why is it better than the other guy that's also promising the same or similar features? What really is going to set you apart and make you different and more special than everybody else? And so we need to work on the marketing game of, you know, here's why Cardano is actually better than everybody else, and you should choose us instead of somebody else promising you the same things.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, because I saw Mark Cuban's point pretty well, where he's like, people would be like, hey, how about this project? And it's like, yeah, that was like a clone of like Uniswap, or like, what's this product? And it's like, yeah, they already have this over here. Like, is there any new innovation happening, or is it just remaking a thing on a different blockchain and saying, well, we're cheaper, so come hang out over here? Or is it like we actually have some kind of new like innovation?
Yeah, because, you know, I really took it away that he was going, okay, yeah, so like maybe you can lure people that are already in crypto to go from one chain to another chain, but like what really is going to spark it wide open, right? And make the average sports fan or the average mom and pop grocery store, or, you know, what's going to drive that really big adoption, you know, because I mean, he's a rich dude with a lot of money. So when you talk about earning $1 million to him, that means nothing, right?
Yeah.
He's looking at, how do I make even more really, really big money? So getting 1,000 users, having $1 million worth of revenue for him is small potatoes, even though to the rest of us, that's that would be the pinnacle of success. So it really is beneficial, I think, to have had that opportunity to see how he views the world in a sense, and what it takes to attract somebody like him.
So this is my take, Adam. I actually don't know if he's in crypto for investment right now. I think he's I honestly think Mark Cuban is getting into crypto, and he's even said this before on podcasts as well, to become an expert in the space. So I really do think that that's why he would even take the time to engage with people on Twitter that he maybe doesn't know. Because I honestly think he puts these polarizing things out there to start conversations himself and expedite the learning process. Because maybe in 5 years from now, Mark Cuban, how he makes probably the most money is through his brand. And that's by being a speaker on these topics and being, you know, able to be the guy that everyone is still looking to and stay relevant past, you know, the Shark Tank era. So I that's what I think his angle might be, is to extract as much information as possible, maybe not agree with it right off the bat, but at least be aware and say things. And then when people disagree with them, chime in to learn more and maybe find his own vulnerabilities.
Yeah, I mean that's entirely possible, and you know that I think that's what actually like got him to respond. Is I said like, hey, maybe he was engagement farming, and just being incendiary on purpose, right? And then he responded to that like, hang on a second, and but maybe that was the method or the takeaway. Like I'm going to go say something, get people fired up. That's going to increase my brand because my name. They're talking about me and my name, while at the same time I'm going to get basically a free crash course in what's going on over here, you know?
Yeah, I honestly think that that's part of his game plan. But who really knows, you know, like we can only speculate what is going on in somebody like Mark Cuban's mind. I think that what's also interesting about what you said earlier, though, getting off the Mark Cuban topic is, okay, so now that we kind of see there's a lot of competing projects out there, and I think a lot of us that understand the UTXO model understand that we can send 50 assets at a time. There's a lot in Cardano already to market. However, like there is also this element of kind of innovating where our innovation might not be out of the box innovation. It might be taking a concept and trying to make it in a safer way, and maybe not true innovation all the time. So I understand that. But like when it comes to marketing, what do you think we can improve in our marketing, and how do we do it? Because we have these people like me and Subcritical who research, make newsletters, maybe do YouTube channels, and we're just part of the community. Is that playing into the marketing, or do you think it has to come from the top, like people from IOHK projects? Like how can marketing get better and improved?
Well, and not to beat the Mark Cuban dead horse too much, but I think that was one of his really good points is like the mass adoption is going to come when people are interacting with an app and they don't even realize that they're using Cardano underneath, right? And I think that's kind of where Cardano is positioning itself, is to be that base layer that really provides a rock solid, secure blockchain to do all of these amazing applications on top of. So, you know, you just download the Atala Prism wallet app for your phone, and it's got your educational records and your healthcare records, and you can choose to send them and share them with people and things like that. As a user, you don't even necessarily need to realize or know that Cardano is going on underneath, right? So I think a big part of it is going to be that an individual project that really gets people's attention is going to be what drives that adoption. And I do think it needs to come from individual projects really making a difference, more so than just relying on IOG or the Cardano Foundation or somebody else to do all that hard work for us. We can't take community decentralized ownership of this project while still relying on central authorities to do the marketing for us. So yeah, it's tough. Unfortunately, I'm not a marketing guy. I'm a development guy. So, you know, take everything I say around marketing with a big old grain of salt. But yeah, we all share ownership in that as well. And I think that's really important, is the big projects that really do marketing right and really get a lot of users coming in to use their app is going to do more good for Cardano than IOG going, we built a better blockchain than everybody else, so come use our blockchain. Because a lot of people right now are going, what do I need a blockchain for? That's just the state of the market that we live in right now.
And that's kind of like the killer app phenomenon too, right? It's more value marketing, like building the killer app, because what was it for PlayStation 1? I think it was Final Fantasy. For certain platforms, at least, there's always like that killer app that kind of brings people into that platform, whether and they might not need to know all the tech or specifics of it, but they will just get it so they can use that killer app. And I think that ties into what you're saying quite a bit, actually.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have an internet connection in your home because the W3 consortium did such a good job of advertising about the TCP/IP spec and stuff like that, right?
Shout out to the W3. Yep, they're definitely helping the web users for sure. But yeah,
so they're so critical. The whole thing falls apart without them.
Right. Nobody
but
knows who they are.
yeah, nobody outside of the super nerds knows who they are. And yeah, that's what IOG and Cardano should be, right? But you're coming and you're buying the infrastructure, you're buying the PS1 because you have to interact with that killer app. So yeah, I think that's where we'll really see a big change, a tidal shift in cryptocurrency in general over the next few years.
Yeah, because that's definitely the argument you always see people like online. They're like, the Cardano Foundation needs to do more marketing, more marketing. And it's like, like you're saying, you can't just be like, come use the blockchain, come use the blockchain. Like, how much more can you market it? Like, we really do need it something specific that people are coming over for. Because like, even with like Pancake Swap and all that, not many people were using it until they found out about the meme coins like Safe Moon and all that other junk, and then they just wanted to go try it out, and that's what made them sign up and use it. Was it like a great product? No, but like there was hype behind it. So like we'll have those same things, I believe, like as soon as things start getting off, like, you know, like when we get Vasil and we can start having more like lending and borrowing, and then maybe some new apps will pop up that we don't even know about yet.
Do you think because I'm invested mentally, I like to say, because I think it's healthier to say that, in this whole thing of like the metaverse. And we have DeFi, we have like the metaverse, we have CNFTs, we have like these different kind of fields brewing, but I definitely think the metaverse is now this new subcategory of crypto, especially Web3 metaverses. Do you have any thoughts on like that particular sector, Adam, the metaverse sector?
I don't know. I'm still framing my opinion around the whole metaverse concept because it's not really something that I am really gravitating towards. And that's probably because I spend the majority of my days, you know, buried in code and looking at lines of code to make things happen. So I don't get a lot of time to play video games or interact with something like a metaverse. So, you know, for me, I'm like, hey, yeah, you own digital land in something, but it's only going to be as good as the adoption, right? So again, it's like, why do I go to the other side? Do I go to Pavia? Do I go to Reach? Do I go to, like, which one do I go to? Why do I want to spend my time there interacting with people and playing games and being advertised to? You know, like, why am I opting into that? And so, yeah, until somebody really has like the, oh my God, like this is replacing Facebook and Twitter as the new way to like socially interact and engage on a regular basis. I think all of them are going to be pretty niche, just like Second Life has been for the last 20 years.
Yeah, no, I think that we're very early, but I think the thing that Jawad, the CEO of Virtua, said to me that kind of stuck out is, and me and Subcritical make a lot of VR content. You know, Reach, we don't use our, I think Subcritical does sometimes our Oculuses for, but we do have Oculuses. We're trying to just experiment with the tech and see what the Web2 companies that are making games or infrastructure are actually doing. So we've actually been kind of spies in Facebook's Horizon Worlds, and I'm actually really impressed by it. You know, like people look at the graphic that was posted. I mean, that's not what Horizon Worlds is making. Like there's games that people play and they play every single day and they try to rank themselves. So VR to me is actually like improving very quickly because I've been using it for a couple of years. But what I do agree with that Jawad said is that a lot of the VR users make fake Facebook. Like he didn't say this part, but they make fake Facebook accounts because they don't want to give away their data. So I do think that there is this element of like, yeah, the Web3 metaverse would be the perfect option if it was equivalent in gameplay, scalability, functionality, fun to the Web2 metaverse. And then you put on digital property, you put on these other aspects that make certain things and energy that you're spending, you can actually turn them into assets, though the blueprints for that haven't been fully, I don't think they're fully safe. Like we don't have a full blueprint for how to make a play to earn game yet. There's a lot of Ponzi kind of nomics in some of the first iterations. So it's still kind of playing out in my mind.
Yeah, and I think that's true. Essentially what a lot of people are creating right now is just a new second life, right? Like that's why Meta, Facebook, whatever you want to call them, are trying to get into it. They've been data mining people for the better part of 20 years and profiting off of that data, and getting people to buy and spend time in their metaverse is ultimately a target at the bottom line. I think the real metaverse is not going to be owned by any corporation or anything like that, and most likely will be something where you're jumping from platform to platform potentially, but you do have this overarching sense of ownership and property and things that are tied to you and your avatar, even if that's across multiple blockchains and multiple different platforms.
Yeah, man. What do you like? I was talking to Marco, and I just think that I would think that you guys would also be very interested in it because of the aspect of virtual events and the Cardano Summit being hosted in Virtua this year was kind of a nice little proof of concept for that because of things like CNFT Con. Yeah, it's once a year, but obviously these virtual events, what we're kind of doing now, and maybe it doesn't feel more immersive than a Twitter space, but to me it kind of will evolve into it, especially when we can see when each other is talking and we can kind of just hang out and go to different places or see different exposés, walk into different rooms. What do you think about, like, because I would think that you would be interested more in the virtual event side of it because it seems maybe more practical than some of the other concepts that are very early, like games or things of that nature.
Yeah, I think the idea of the virtual events is really neat. Like you said, the summit being held in person and virtually by Virtua, or what we've seen like with Future Fest holding some concerts and things like that in their kind of little corner of the metaverse, where you do get a more it's more immersive than simply watching a YouTube or pay-per-view stream, right? Because you're there, you can move around in the environment, you can be standing next to your buddies and take selfies together. So it is really interesting how it kind of globalizes the audience for events like that. So I think there's a lot of potential there for making events more accessible. But again, yeah, for me, it's still a personal choice that, like, it's not how I want to spend my time. But I can definitely see the benefit of it to the
Unless it's
larger
with
audience.
crypto and subcritical, right? Like,
Yeah.
maybe we could move into DeFi and CNFTs too, because I know that those are two other big sectors. Subcritical. Would you like to? I don't know if you wanted to frame. It sounded like you wanted to frame DeFi too a little bit. Do you got anything on that?
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess I don't really know what Adam is into on the DeFi realm at all, or if he's interested in kind of seeing how Vasil's going to work out with all these new projects.
Yeah, well, honestly, I'm not really like into DeFi because I don't fully understand all the different terms and compounding and what I'm earning where, sort of thing. I'm still a novice in that regard and still learning. Um, so I don't play a lot of the games on DeFi in terms of trying to trade this and do arbitrage, because it seems to be very similar just to um, the same as investing in stocks or cryptocurrency and trying to get profits or make gains by timing the markets right and things like that. It's definitely interesting in terms of seeing a lot of the new projects that we'll have on Cardano coming along after the Vasil hard fork occurs, in terms of the chain being faster and able to handle a lot more transaction volume. So I think that's going to open it up and really allow the people that are interested in DeFi to really go and use Cardano kind of mainstream, if you will, in terms of DeFi, since right now we've seen that it can be on the slow side. Things don't settle kind of as quickly as you would like. So yeah, a lot of good coming. We're just not quite there yet.
Yeah, that's definitely how I feel about it too. I'm just kind of hoping to see like all these protocols kind of speed up a bit, and then maybe like eventually we can move away from all the like batching that we're doing in like dexes and things like that, because I feel like that's a little bit more centralized than I really like. I mean, we've seen with like the bridge hacks that kind of happened with like Nomad recently, and then that things like Wing Riders can just kind of like shut everything down and be like, hey, you can't trade this anymore. It is obviously it doesn't feel as decentralized when things like that can happen, but I mean, we'll kind of see what happens in the future.
Yeah, well, and it's an interesting struggle as part of the EUTXO model that really gets introduced versus the accounts model. You know, it is why we need some of these things like batchers and things like that to really smooth out the kinks and allow for the concurrency. But yeah, I think overall we get through it, and it gets better post Vasil when we can again not have to fire off one transaction and wait, and then so with what is it, transaction pipelining and some of the other big things that we have coming in the future.
So like this other kind of, I've been following some of the new standards talks or some of what Alessandro has put out too, because what I've experienced in watching some of the things SpaceBuds did with Lucid, with like the community collection or SpaceBuds identity, was really cool and innovative to me. I did see you, I think, get involved into. I mean, honestly, Adam, the reason why I love following you on Twitter, and people, anybody watching should definitely follow Adam on Twitter if they're not, because I just feel like you get into a lot of stuff that I'm interested in or don't know much about. So it's kind of pulling at both ends. What do you think about things like Lucid? What do you think about this kind of next era of CNFTs? Where do you think CNFTs are going? And some other thoughts on that would be really interesting to hear from you.
Yeah, well, it's Lucid's really cool. I haven't had a lot of chance to play with it, primarily because I'm not a Node.js developer. It's not my background. So for me, I'm still kind of learning the ropes and kind of deciphering what all Alessandro is doing there in that library. But I do know it was essentially an open source library to make interacting with Cardano Plutus smart contracts a lot easier for the average developer. And it's been amazing to watch the amount of contributions that he's made open source to the space, in terms of, you know, the first light wallet with a dApp integration capability, and now Lucid and some other things that he uses. You know, SpaceBuds, his NFT project, is kind of like the test bed for a lot of these things to drive forward with new innovative ideas that, you know, and sometimes that means we butt heads because, you know, he's got an idea and a thought and a way of that it should work. But that's, again, part of the beauty of kind of the peer review of the community, is that it takes other people reading your ideas and giving you feedback and criticisms to really forge that idea into something rock solid. You know, when we had SIP25 come out first last April, it was basically you can have a single image and a name and a description, right? And then maybe a little bit of extra stuff, like, and so like we saw with berries and SpaceBuds. But then the community took it and went like, well, let us put in AR models, you know, GLB files. Let us put in embedded text HTML that's all 100% on chain, but you can decipher it. So no IPFS required to have an NFT. So that all came from the community taking kind of the groundwork that Alessandro laid and then building on top of it. So he's been an immense contribution to the Cardano ecosystem. And I'm always kind of proud to get a chance to kind of back and forth with him a little bit to refine ideas and come up with new standards and new ways of doing things that elevate the entire space.
What was the one that you guys were talking about? And then Thaddeus from Wild Tangs got into it. Was it SIP 0? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's SIP 68. which is kind of a new NFT format that Alessandro was rolling around in his head, and probably will get adopted as one way to create NFTs on Cardano. I don't think CIP25 is going anywhere because we've got 5 million plus NFTs on the chain at this point that all use CIP25. But CIP68 is really interesting because it allows for doing things like updating the metadata of a token if that's relevant to a project, or bringing the metadata into a Plutus smart contract so that you can say that only people with a CAT PFP are allowed to take this action. So there's a lot of interesting stuff there. It does present some trade-offs, like higher cost to the people creating and managing the tokens and things like that. So I don't think it's the be-all, end-all, but it's a new standard to allow us to do more new cool things if we want. And yeah, there was kind of a very public Twitter back and forth about some of the bad things that Thaddeus and I saw about this CIP68 style. And again, that started with a sensational tweet by Alessandro saying CIP25 is dead and we should all stop using it, right? And so that's what got us up and got us talking. But a lot of really good constructive discourse has come from that. Alessandro and I have been able to chat privately about some ideas about how both of these things work together for the greater security and benefit of the entire space. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I never take it too personally or anything when we get into these little Twitter back and forths, because I know the vast majority of people are here for the good of the ecosystem and just want to see it elevated and improved.
Mm-hmm. Then we did hit our hour, so we're about to wrap up, but I did just want to ask about like CNFTCon, if there's any specific thing you're really excited about that you can tell us, or maybe there's something you can't even tell us about yet.
I'm just excited about the entire event. We're having some great discussions with some big players locally in Las Vegas and everything to maybe try some new things out and see how they work in terms of increasing both the utility of NFTs on Cardano and bringing some bridges from IRL events to the digital blockchain world. So not anything that we can really go on the public record as saying, but I mean, again, just getting to meet everybody that we've gotten to know over this last year and a half in person, share a drink or a hug or a handshake with all of them is going to be a really great moment, I think, for the community.
Yeah, I think Jay said he's going to take me out and buy me a big steak or something like that.
You want a big steak? I never committed to that, but we can talk. So do you know if Alessandro is going to CNFTCon?
As far as I know, yeah, he's planning on being there. So I'm looking forward to getting to finally meet him in person. Patrick, a lot of these people that I've had super long conversations with, been on podcasts with, things like that, and actually get to meet and talk to them in person is going to be really awesome.
Yeah, I was just thinking about like discussions around SIPs and being able to have these brief interactions or maybe phone calls that the public doesn't see, but then being able to meet them in person and now talk about it in a much more immersive way. I feel like that's gonna just always be a really healthy format to innovating the space. I'm excited to see what comes out of that, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And education and outreach to the larger community is a large part of our mission with CNFTCon. So we're absolutely going to be doing our best to attract people that maybe aren't even into crypto yet, and do a lot of panels and workshops about, here's how to set up a wallet. Here's, how you deal with a centralized exchange to buy your crypto to go and interact with these cool applications and things that you want to do in the Web3 space. So the opportunity to really grow the community as well is another thing that I'm really looking forward to.
Any advice before we let you go, Adam, to content creators like me and Subcritical? Because I asked Marco this, and it's a selfish question. Any advice to content creators who are going to this kind of event for the first time? Because I think me and Subcritical were talking and we were like, yeah, it might be smart just to kind of go and just kind of like, maybe experience, maybe it definitely makes some content, but maybe just experience the event, because chances are that we both, I know myself and probably Subcritical too, we plan to be in this space for a long time. So there's going to be plenty of times that we go to these kinds of events. So I was just like thinking, with Subcritical, it might be good to just kind of go and experience it the first time as sort of a consumer as well as a content creator. Any advice to content creators going to events like this?
Yeah, I would definitely say, for one, just go and experience it and maybe do, like a takeaway show together. But if you do want to try to plan on something, like definitely make those plans ahead of time. Because a lot of people attending are going to be very busy. They're going to have their exhibition booths. They're going to be doing panels and workshops. So you can't really hope to show up and then like score an interview with Claymates.
Right.
It's probably not going to happen. So if you want to try to do those things, try to schedule it out in advance and make the contacts and say, hey, we're sitting down together. We've got this 30 minutes or an hour of time at CNFTCon to do this event. Otherwise, go have fun, enjoy it. And then, like I said, maybe do, kind of like a rehash or takeaways wrap up at the end of the event.
Yeah, I'm on. I don't know. Subcritical. Are you on any panels yet? I'm on one so far, and I think there's a couple others that I need to get back to. But are you doing any panels?
No, I'm not on any panels or anything. I was just kind of going in to take it in and enjoy. I mean, if somebody were to reach out to me, maybe I'd do something. But at this point, I'm just kind of hanging out. I mean, even with Rare Bloom, they reached out to me and were like, "Do you want to do a Twitter Space live?" And I was like, yeah, I guess sure."
So I guess the one thing that was really interesting about that, and I'm going to ask you, Adam, before you go, because I don't know how many chances we got to talk to Adam Dean. I mean, you're kind of moving up in the world, man. But no, I'm just kidding. But so when it comes to saying things like, if you plan to do something, do it now. For people that maybe are projects listening or on teams or content creators listening, what is the scope? Can you list a few things that you could see content creators doing, so that way they can kind of try to figure out ways to plan it now if they already are going to CNFTCon?
Yeah. So again, I think there's a lot of benefit to like having that in-person interview, right? Versus, here in the metaverse or on Zoom, or on a Twitter space or whatever. Like you're going to have that opportunity to interview somebody there in person, and all be, potentially sitting around together talking into the same microphone sort of thing. You're going to have the opportunity to kind of really like show the scope, to go and hear maybe 3 or 4 or 5 different people from different projects all on a panel, and kind of like digest all of that. Because again, kind of like a tweet being taken out of context, it's easy to grab a soundbite, but then to take like, hey, here's all this information that was presented across this hour-long panel, and break it down for people and say like, hey, here's the cliff notes, my takeaways from it, I think are all really good aspects that can both help to the lay people that are coming in after the fact and maybe don't fully understand the scope of the conversation, or make it into short pieces of content that are more palatable for people that only have limited amounts of time and can't tune in for the entirety of the event. Because a lot of things are going to be recorded and live streamed and published to YouTube after the fact. But taking 20 plus hours of content, or however much we generate over the scope of the weekend, and being able to break it down as somebody that was there and actively involved is a really, really cool thing. And I think we're going to be publishing our map, really showing off like all the projects that are going to be there, and everything is going to be helpful in the next few days. That's going to be helpful to say like, oh, these guys are going, let me reach out to them, and maybe try to get an interview or schedule some time that we can talk about them and their project or whatever. So
You guys, is there any when you say that there's mics and stuff, is there like, what kind of equipment should people be bringing? Is or is there any equipment provided? Is there like spaces? Can you kind of give us is there like a visual like ideas out there or concepts out there to kind of show what it's gonna look like? Maybe even from last year, I guess people could probably try to find that footage, but just for people that are going, have something set up, what kind of equipment should they be expected to kind of bring to maximize the experience?
Well, so last year we did all virtual because we were still all shut down thanks to COVID and everything. But those the original CNFTCon 2021 videos and panels and everything are all still online. So this will be our first year as an in-person event, and we are working on having kind of a podcaster interview room for media to sit down and have a space. But I don't know that we'll be providing necessarily like microphones and cameras and specialty lighting, for lack of a better term, if you're really worried about like how you look on video. So I would say, you know, plan on stuff, bringing your own equipment so you're not relying on it too, because I don't know how many content creators we'll have there and how busy whatever space we do create will be. Hopefully in the near future, like I said, we're going to have the show floor plan map, which is going to show where all the booths are, where the meeting and panel rooms are, where that podcast and streaming space is going to be. So you'll be able to get all that in the next couple of weeks here. But yeah, definitely, I would say plan on bringing enough equipment that you could do kind of your content creation without relying on anybody else, but in a format that's easily transportable. You know, I saw a lot of content creators at the summit last year with just kind of like a GoPro on a selfie stick sort of thing. And maybe, you know, a single microphone that was tapped in so that they could hold it out to somebody that they're interviewing, but still be very highly mobile and move around the space.
No, that's super helpful. Thanks, Adam. So why don't we give you a chance to say your final takeaway? Is there anything that you're really interested in right now that you think more people should be interested in about Cardano, about this space, about the tech that you think is potentially overlooked?
I still think that, you know, we started to get DeFi and NFTs and that kind of took people's eye off the prize a little bit. When I joined Cardano, we didn't have any of that. And we were here because Cardano is a blockchain aiming to be the global financial operating system for the world and the base layer that enabled us to bank the unbanked and make a lot of good positive steps in places and countries, you know, of course, particularly Africa, that are currently underserved. And I think NFTs and DeFi and things like that are good, but we need to remember the core mission is really helping the people that are currently underserved rather than strictly being in it to increase the size of our own net worth. So I'm really interested to see what World Mobile and Empower and a lot of these people that are boots on the ground in Africa are doing, and what Atala Prism's doing in Africa, in Ethiopia for the Ministry of Education and things like that. Because I think socially that's so much more important, and we need to keep that in mind and remember that's what a lot of us were here for from the beginning.
I love it. Subcritical, anything else before we let this massive player in our ecosystem go on and keep doing great stuff?
No, I just want to say thanks for coming out. I know you've been really busy, especially this week. So it's just great to have you here and to hear all your thoughts.
Right on. Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate you inviting me on. And yeah, looking forward to talking more in the future.
Did you enjoy the metaverse experience, Adam?
Yeah, it's been pretty cool. I've been sitting here playing with like different camera angles and watching how, you know, kind of all of our little avatars are scripted and moving their hands as we're talking and stuff. So it's been a very neat experience overall.
I'm glad to hear it, man. Well, thanks so much. And Subcritical, I guess that's a wrap. So there's another J Critical episode with an awesome guest. Thank you, Adam Dean.